Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit arnoldclark.com.
Welcome to Peter and Roughie's Football Show, sponsored by Arnold Clark. It is Wednesday, the 5th of August. We're delighted to have your company. Don't forget to like, share and follow us on Facebook, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. It costs you absolutely nothing. I'm delighted that you could join us on the programme and show your support in joining our football family. Tam McManus and Alan Rough are here with me. We might as well start off with the predictor. Over the weekend, Tam thought he did well, Roughy thought he did well, and I thought, well, I was a steady Eddie after game one. So, guys, have a look at the scores after weekend number one in the Premiership. There you are. I'm on 8. Tam, you're on 11, and Roughy, way out in front, Roughy, on 13. How do you feel?
Yeah, well, I always said you need a good start in this competition, and got that at the weekend. That doesn't mean anything. It can go either way, but certainly 13 points at the start was excellent. Would Tam have? I missed that there. Would Tam have?
Tam had 11. Are you happy with your start, Tam?
Well, I knew whatever points I had, Roughy would probably have run about the same because he just copied all my picks. So it's no surprise that we're only 2 points between us. But
yeah.
At least I'm no last.
Yeah, and what I'm going to do, Tam, is, and you have to get used to the way he works out ways to cheat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure we write all the stuff down in the paper or in an email or in a text and fire it through to each other so we can't copy each other. But the good thing is, Roughy deserves to be there. He's out in front, so well done to you, Roughy. And thanks to the countless people who have joined us, obviously, on our Facebook and, of course, across on our YouTube as well. I'll try and read out as many of the points that you want to make as is possible. A big hi to Stephen Martin, who's always on there with us. Jeanette McGinn as well. Alison, John Dutton has joined us. Niall Kane, thank you. Tommy Ferry and Paul Maguire, great to have you with us. Stephen Martin, Ronnie Porter as well. And of course, Ronnie Porter says Ross County was the coupon buster. Ronnie, don't I know it? And Gary Adam is saying, I'm still waiting on my PLZ T-shirt. This is not the show for you. Don't worry about it, Gary. It'll get there. It's only a matter of time. There's lots to talk about on the programme. If you want to put your point across to any of us, by all means, we'll try and read out as many of them as we possibly can. Graham Jones, afternoon team, great show. As a Hearts fan, what's your thoughts on lockdown in Aberdeen and how will Aberdeen play their game at the weekend? Well, what an interesting situation this is. Suddenly, Roughy, Aberdeen's in lockdown. Nicola Sturgeon said that if there was any spike anywhere that had to be quickly nipped in the bud, she would close things down in that particular region. And suddenly, Aberdeen's in lockdown. I don't think it will affect the game against St Johnstone. I might be wrong, but suddenly that area, you can't go in or out of it.
Yeah, and fortunately enough, the Aberdeen boys, I think, are being tested. I think it's twice a week, so they'll know exactly where they stand with that one. That might be the gate out for them to come out of the 5 mile zone because they'll have the records there. I mean, everybody else in Aberdeen won't have been tested the way that they've been tested, so I'm sure they might get away with that one. But we all thought this was going to happen. We didn't know where it was going to happen, but let's hope this is just an isolated incident and it doesn't get any worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi to Robert Arbuckle. Robert, great to have you on with us. Peter Tierney as well. And Francis Dubb LU, good to have you with us. And also Robert Ralston. There's lots of people joining us more and more. I'm reading it just above my head. I decided to put it above my head now so I don't have to keep looking down. And Bill Muirhead says, get the show on the road, Peter. I'll tell you one thing, Roughy. With Tam, who's been absolutely flying last year, I thought he was certainly one of the best newcomer awards on the after dinner circuit, Roughy. If we'd managed to get on the road with McManus, Cowan, yourself, and me with the hosting mic, it really would be a great night out. Good bit of banter, good show as well. I think we take it on the road, Roughy, if we can.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. It'd be great to get out there and meeting the people. As you know, when we go out, we tend to meet some of the guys who phone the show and come on the show quite a lot. So yeah, personal touch is always good. Always a good banter.
Yeah, I always like to keep a bit of balance. We meet lots of the girls who watch the show as well, Tam, to be perfectly honest with you. There's such a, well, it's just about, that's what he's like, you know, he's 1970s. He's still watching Steve Austin, the $6 million man. But nevertheless, Tam, be good to go out on the road and let people hear your chat.
Yeah, it would be great. I think it's a great idea. We'd love to go out and meet obviously there's so many people tuning into the show now. It'd be great to go out and meet them in person. And the ones that give us abuse, I just wonder if they would still give us abuse on the night. They'd probably give Roughie abuse, but maybe no me.
No, they don't give him abuse, but I have to tell you, Tam, just from my own experience, and you've witnessed it as well, I know the people who are trying to give me abuse when I walk up onto the top of the stage. You can spot them a mile off, Roughy, until, of course, I then decide to scattergun every one of them, and it's a right good night out, Tam, as you know. Anyway, apart from anything else, Gary Doonan says, get that Barnet sorted, Roughy, before you go anywhere. He's gone through. Are you getting a haircut tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yeah. I'm going to Robin tomorrow, 10:40. So that'll be a new experience for me tomorrow. That'll be my second haircut since the lockdown.
Yeah,
Roughy,
Tam,
Roughy, are you going to go in and ask for what Peter asked for? A Barry Ferguson. He's even got the All Saints top on.
Honestly, do you not just mention him
Look
on
at
every
his
show
shed.
since he's gone? I know, absolutely. But whatever happened to him? Anyway, apart from anything else, we stop bringing him up, by the way, and let's move on. Anyway, apart from anything else, Alison, Sarah Carroll says, Peter, I'll be there when you do get the show on the road. And Alison, I promise you, we are definitely going to do it. Okay, let's concentrate on, apart from anything else, just one other little footnote, Roughy. Jim Ross, who's a big Jambo, who's a regular listener and viewer of the show, said, can you just correct Roughy? I think he said Willie Wood was a Hibby. He's a big Jambo himself. Willie Wood, the Bowls player, Roughy, is a big Jambo, loves the Hearts. He just thought he'd correct you on it, okay?
Just winding him up.
Yeah, we don't want to mix up the Jambos and the Hibbies. You know, you've got famous.
Oh, no.
Who would you say is the most famous Hibbies? Is it the Proclaimers? Is there any?
Or
would you consider
definitely.
Is Dougray Scott not above the
Scott,
Proclaimers?
yeah.
Irvin Welsh.
Yeah.
Irvin Welsh. Yeah. Irvin Welsh and Dougray Scott. They are Proclaimers there, maybe?
Marillion Fish.
Yeah, Fish. Yeah, he's a big Hibby.
Andy Murray.
Big Hibby. Andy
Murray's a big Hibby, yeah. He's up there as well. Any famous Jambo
Judy Murray.
Judy Murray's a big Roughy fan. She's not just get him at
that's Roughie's favourite.
Thanks for that, Roughy, to remind us it was tennis. The other one I was going to say, is there any famous Jambos? Any famous Jambo fans? No, yeah, somebody will need to tell me, because I absolutely will have to find out if there are any famous Jambo fans. I'll tell you what is.
They must have a group. I mean, every team's got a group that follows them.
Yeah, we'll try and come up with that as well. Famous pop groups that follow them. So the Proclaimers are almost certainly for Hibernian, and Rod Stewart is Celtic, as well as Simple Minds. And then after that, I'll go through. Some of them will tell us if you can, any famous pop groups that actually follow a Scottish Premiership team. We're going to concentrate on Rangers, because the big news was, of course, two strikers. Here's a look at the two men in question.
Rangers have signed forward Cedric Itten and Kemar Roof on 4-year deals for an undisclosed fee, believed to be a combined £6 million. Kemar Roof joins from Anderlecht after an injury-laden spell, but is a proven goalscorer, having struck 33 times for Leeds across 3 seasons. The 27-year-old is an adaptable attacker, good with the ball, and can also play out wide or behind the striker. Roof himself called the move the right fit, whilst his new manager believes him to be an intelligent attacker who's experienced the pressure and expectation at a big club already. Cedric Itten is a different kind of player. At 6'2", he likes to stay in the box more, but is no less prolific. Itten scored 20 club goals last campaign for St Gallen and has struck 3 times in 2 appearances for Switzerland. The 23-year-old will hope to add a different presence to the front line, with Gerrard labelling him a goalscorer who adds great depth. The players will join up with the squad after Rangers' Europa League tie with Bayer Leverkusen, and their addition surely signals the end of Alfredo Morelos' Ibrox career.
Well, does it spell the end, Tam, in your mind?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think it's been coming anyway. I think Rangers had to strengthen, they had to go and buy 2 strikers. 2 different kinds of strikers. As I said, Kemar Roof there, 27 years old. At the peak of his career, went to Anderlecht. Done well for Anderlecht. Very experienced. I think Anderlecht signed him for €7 million. So it was a big outlay from them. I think he's had a few injury problems over there, but his goal scoring record was still pretty good when he played. And Cedric Itten, I think I'd be quite excited if I was a Rangers fan looking at him. Only 23, looks a big lad. 6'2", 3 goals and 2 caps for Switzerland, and 28 and 58 league games for St Gallen in the Swiss Premier League. So he looks a real prospect for Rangers. And if you add to that Defoe, I think that Rangers are very well stocked now up front. They had to go and buy 2 good players, and I think they've done that.
Yeah, I mean, the second one, no disrespect to Kemar Roof, I'm waiting to see what he can offer. But the second one, because of his size, Roughy, his height alone, and he does look like a big guy, his physicality could be a key element for Rangers. It will give them something different, Roughy. They can mix it up.
Yeah, sometimes when you've got a player like that, it changes your whole style of play. A big guy, 6'3", automatic choice is try and get the ball up to him as quick as possible. If you can hold it up for the midfield to support him. So it might be a change of tactic for Steven Gerrard. Obviously you get Kent on one side, causing all mayhem wide. And it'd be interesting to see which one he thinks is the first choice. But it certainly is. As Steven Gerrard has been telling everybody, that he wants better quality. This seems to be better quality coming in, and I'm sure if you're a Rangers supporter, you'll be cock-a-hoop with these 2 signings, and you will now start believing that there is a challenge on the go. Obviously, wee Lenny, hasn't he, shown his cards yet. We hear about 2 or 3 players he's trying to negotiate with. So, I think year on year, Rangers have got better. But we have to wait and see, what kind of formation and which one of these guys are playing. And as you said, Defoe, we don't know where he is.
Yeah, I still think he'll bring in maybe 1 or 2 more at Ibrox. I don't think he's finished, Tam.
No, I don't think he's finished either. I think obviously when they sell Morelos, I think he will go now. They were talking about 7 or 8 million outlay for the 2 strikers, and if you're getting your 14, 15 for Morelos, still plenty of money in the pot there to go and strengthen the Rangers squad, and there's different areas. I think maybe another wide man. I think they're well stocked for centre-halves if they can keep them fit. Maybe a right back, maybe somebody to compete with Tavernier. So Rangers squad, as Roughie said, it's getting better every year. And they're spending money. You can't. No Rangers fan can complain or mumble about the money that Rangers are spending, because they're certainly spending money, giving Steven Gerrard money since he's come in the door. So the pressure's on. They aim to go on top. Obviously, it's a big season for both. But I think the Rangers fans will be delighted with the 2 boys that have come in yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. Give us your thoughts on that, Rangers fans. Are you happy with the signings? Is this the challenge you want to see that's so crucial for 10 in a row to try and stop it? Alison Ross says, Jambo fans, got to tell you, she's mentioned Sir Chris Hoy. I didn't know that. Nicky Campbell, is he a Jambo? Ailey Doyle, or Ailey Child as she's known, and of course James Anderson, one of the most famous Jambos so far. I have to tell you, he's not only a Jambo, he's a saviour for so many in Scottish football. We are delighted. James Anderson loves his football. And Stephen Hendry is another one that so many of you have mentioned, who's a Jambo. Yeah, I mean he's another famous one. Alex Salmond is a Jambo as well. So you've got all these names from politics and sport, and of course let's not forget Amy McDonald, Roughy, a big Rangers fan. Amy, she loves the Rangers, and if you ever get a chance, Roughy, to buy the albums, good chanter, brilliant albums.
Well, we might be able maybe get a chance to see her in the boardroom this year with her husband who joined Partick Thistle. So
Of
I'm
course.
sure she'll be at some of the games, so I'll be able to have a wee chat with her.
Yeah, she'll
Fanboy,
be
big
at
Roughy.
the. Yeah, oh, absolutely. She's. By the way, I'll tell you one thing about her. She's got good patter. She's got a bit about her. You know, she's got a feisty attitude. But listen, her albums are magnificent. I'm a huge fan, and she will probably be at Firhill as well to support Richard when Partick Thistle are playing Rangers. To be honest with you, so Rangers are Rangers are out there in Germany, ready for the game at the Bayer Arena against Bayer Leverkusen. They're 3-1 down. Here's how the Rangers fixture fits into the other Europa League fixtures over the 2 nights. We've got football to look forward to, European football at that. So Copenhagen against Istanbul, Shakhtar Donetsk against Wolfsburg, Inter Milan Getafe, Manchester United against Linz. I was thinking about watching that, but 5-0 up from the first leg. I think I'll give it a body swerve. And the other ones, Leverkusen against Rangers, Sevilla against Roma, Basel against Frankfurt, and Wolves against Olympiacos. Okay, he doesn't have the main signings, Tam, but has he got enough just to... I mean, it really would put the cat among the pigeons if they could get a goal early on, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think the first goal's massive in the game, massive in the tie, Peter. I think if Rangers can get it, you never know with Leverkusen. You know, they could have a little wobble and be nervous. And I think if Rangers need to go and chase the game, you know, if they go 1-0 down, I think Bayer Leverkusen could win the game comfortably. But Rangers are certainly a very good, you know, they've been brilliant away from home in Europe, particularly when teams come onto them. And you would think that Bayer Leverkusen, being favourites and being, you know, they would come on to Rangers and go and attack, and Rangers can pick them off. As you said, just a pity that the two new boys aren't available. I think the Rangers fans would have loved that. But first goal, massive. Do I fancy Rangers? Not really. But they're certainly no hopers. If they can get a goal in the first 20 minutes, then you never know.
Yep, fingers crossed on that, Roughy, because we want all our Scottish clubs to do well. I mean, listen, we bleat on about the coefficient, but usually it's Celtic and Rangers that increase that coefficient. I personally, Roughy, as well as Rangers, would love to see an Aberdeen or a Motherwell make the group stages. It would just lift not only our game, but it really would give fans a chance to get their teeth into European football as well. I like watching, you know, all our clubs do well in Europe. I love watching the games that they're involved in. It gives us a real buzz.
Yeah, I think Aberdeen have been the disappointing team in Europe for me over the last 3 or 4 years. They always threaten to get a wee bit further and get us more points, but they seem to fall at the last hurdle. So I'm sure Darren McManus will want something positive this year, you know, if they get a favourable draw. And as you know, Tam Cowan, he loves going away with Motherwell in the European ties. But I think the squad that he's got now have played in Europe a few times, so they should be getting a learning curve for that. And hopefully they can improve as well. So yeah, you're right. You know, we want them all in there. We're fed up just getting to December and we've only got maybe one team left after December. It'd be great if we had 2 or 3 teams still in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not too sure Tam will be able to follow Motherwell if they get to the group stages, because that would mean he'd have to stop his Instagram account, which he's on 24/7. I mean, honestly, I just wonder what he does. He's just, if he goes to pick his nose, it's on Instagram. You know, he covers every part of his life. He needs to get something else to do. But Stephen Hill, who's clearly not a Rangers fan, says Bayer Leverkusen to win 3-0 at home comfortably. Well, it's an opinion, Stephen. Some people obviously think they might get a wee shock if Rangers could get that early goal. John George Forsyth says, I'm delighted with the 2 signings. Morelos is a good player on his day, but Rangers can't afford to keep him. This is the biggest season for Rangers and these players, and Morelos taking a tantrum and getting sent off just isn't worth the risk, says George. We've seen Morelos getting sent off last season and how it affected the team. So, John, I think you're 100% correct here. I think that's what it's at the back of Stephen Gerrard's mind, Roughy. And I think it's also, ironically, on a parallel with Celtic, I think it's at the back of, you know, Neil Lennon's mind with Lee Griffiths. So you've got 2 managers who are saying to himself, do I trust them 100% in this season of all seasons? I said last night I didn't think Neil Lennon trusted Lee Griffiths 100% to behave. And I think Steven Gerrard is just towing the party line at the moment, say, it's part of the plans at the moment until they get him out.
Yeah, as far as Rangers are concerned, I think Steven Gerrard needs one of these two new signings to be a 25 goal a season striker. If it's more than that, it's a bonus. I don't think if any of the two of them don't reach 25, it's going to be an uphill challenge for them, because we certainly know that Celtic have got the firepower up front and in midfield. As far as Lee Griffiths is concerned, I think if a striker was to come in, unfortunately, I think the way things are, I think Lee would drop down the pecking order. We all know what he's like, but I just feel it's the injury side of him. He seems to be picking up this calf injury or whatever it is, and it's sort of ongoing, So Neil Lennon will be saying to himself, look, I know what I can get off him on the park, but how many weeks am I going to be out of him, in the season with this injury? So he's unfortunately put himself under a lot of pressure, Lee, but we all know if he's given the chance on the park and he is fully fit, he will score goals. But from a personal view, I would like to think he'll be saying to himself, look, if Lenny goes out and gets another striker, I'm under pressure here. I've really got to come up with the goods, because I'm now slipping down the pecking order. It's all right, everybody's saying, we're a great partnership with Edward, but these other boys will be saying, we can be a partnership with him as well. So
Roughy,
you have to really knuckle down.
See, to be honest with you, it's very frustrating, I think, for Neil Lennon as well, because you've got Lee Griffiths, who he knows is not fit enough. And if you try to do fitness work with Lee and you're trying to get him fit and he keeps breaking down with injuries, then you're just getting back to square one. So I think that's a real problem for Celtic, trying to do the work to get him fit, and if he keeps breaking down with injuries, you're never going to get him 100%.
But this is not unique to Neil Lennon. This is the problem that Brendan Rodgers had with him. This is what Brendan Rodgers said time and time again. He doesn't prepare well. He is not professional in his attitude towards being a top pro. And Brendan Rodgers mentioned this. This is not us having a dig at Lee Griffiths. This is highlighting what the problem appears to be. So he needs to knuckle down. But the trust element is where Neil Lennon can't take any chances. Just on that, William Gibson is mentioned on YouTube. Tam, what are the options for your mate? You must be on the phone to him. You've been punting him around every club across Europe. So what about Fletch? What's his thoughts?
Listen, I know Celtic have spoke to his agent and Stephen. I think there is an interest there, but whether he's on a list in terms of pecking order, I know Neil Lennon would quite fancy him, but I think he's got other irons in the fire. I think even Tony seems to be the one that Celtic are really pushing the boat out and want in the door. I think the Ajebe from West Ham, I think that deal's dead now. I think Neil Lennon was pretty annoyed that he wanted more time. I think if you want to come to Celtic and Celtic come in for you, you go straight away. You don't have time to think about other options. So I think that's kind of clouded that for Celtic. And so I think Ivan Toney is definitely the main guy that Celtic want to bring in. But Stephen Fletcher's, there's an interest from Celtic there, no doubt about it. I know that for a fact.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Roughy, Ivan Toney is one of those ones where I think right now, I think Peterborough he's playing for, if my memory serves me correct. I think they're trying to flush out. I think they're trying to flush Celtic out in this one, saying, there are other clubs here. Toney, I think, wants to go to Celtic, but at the end of the day, Celtic do what they do. They bide their time. Personally, I have never seen the boy Toney play, but I'll tell you, if he's not a signing on fee, Stephen Fletcher for me, I was so impressed with him when he came back and played for Scotland as well. I think he could do a job in Scotland, and almost certainly the level Celtic are operating at. I don't know how you feel about that, Roughy.
Yeah, it just depends on which way Celtic are looking at this situation. I think the philosophy at Celtic now is identifying younger players, and getting them in for at a reasonable price and then selling them on, which they've been really, really successful with, and that seems to be the case. They're all getting a chance. You're right, Stephen Fletcher, for nothing. I don't know what the wages would be. I'm sure that he would have to come into line with everybody else, but I'm sure at his stage of his career it would be a fantastic move for him. And how many years ago was it Celtic were going to buy him and they were just $500,000 short? They wouldn't pay it. Was that a few years? 4 years ago?
That was from
remember it was a window. It was a window, and they were wanting 2.5, and Celtic were only going to go to 2, so they let him go. And I think a lot of a lot of Celtic come in for a bit of criticism with that one, because I thought that would have been a good buy at that particular time, because obviously he's done well down in England. But for a free agent, depends on the way Celtic are looking at it. Do we look at, we take him for free and we can up the money for somebody else, and it would be a bargain buy, and we all know he'll score goals.
Well, Stephen Martin has said there's no chance Fletcher's coming to Celtic, Peter. Well, Stephen, that's not what we're saying. I mean, if you listen clearly and pay attention to it, Tam has said for a fact Celtic have talked to him and his agent. That's what clubs do. They just weigh it up. They assess all their options so that they don't get to the end of the window and suddenly have nothing, which has happened to Celtic on a couple of occasions. And the only part that I'm saying is, if you were looking at Stephen Fletcher, in my mind, and this is the key part of it, in my mind, I think he would be a good signing because he offers something that I think is crucial in this. He can put himself about, he can hold the ball up, he can bring people into it, he can score a goal. It might not be prolific, but he's going to get chances when he's at Celtic. It's just a thought. The boy Tony might be the way ahead, because if you're looking for the absolute blueprint of what Celtic are all about, it's young players with a sell-on value, and they make them better players. So that's the key to it. So that's why Tony, I think, is at the front of it. But, strange things happen along the way. And it doesn't necessarily guarantee. Listen, we can talk and be complimentary about every potential signing for Celtic, Rangers, Aberdeen, Motherwell, the whole lot of them. What happens is they come into the league, Tam, and they're not necessarily a success. There is a gamble and some players coming in. I could probably rhyme off, and put down on a piece of paper 30, 40 players that everybody was waxing lyrical about in the last 5 years in Scottish football, and some of them were just failures.
Yep, I think it's a different type of pressure, Peter, when you come at Celtic and Rangers in particular as a striker. I think Celtic have been very hit and miss over the last 4 or 5 years. They have signed some real poor players, to be honest, in terms of striking options. And some of them have went on and done well. Pookie, I think, is a prime example, who was poor at Celtic, went down to Norwich and has done well. But likes of Bangora, guys like that, Ibrahim Baldy, there's a long list of players that they've brought in who just couldn't handle or weren't good enough for Celtic. So I think when you're looking at signing a guy like even Tony, who's played at kind of lower league clubs in England, it's a totally different kettle of fish coming up with the pressure of Celtic. The pressure's on to score every week. You could maybe get away with a game or two at Peterborough and no score, and maybe not win every game. But at Celtic, you've got to win every game. You've got to score every game as the main striker. So obviously every signing is a gamble, Peter. But if you can get guys who have experienced pressure elsewhere and played at a high level, then I think you're shortening the risk.
I'll tell you, I'm just looking at news just coming in, which is the SPFL have announced that the Betfred Cup, the group stage draw, will take place on Monday the 10th of August at 1 o'clock. Group stage games are scheduled for October 6th, 10th and 13th, and November 10th and 14th, which gives you an indication of how cramped the fixture list is going to be in this season of all seasons, because basically of coronavirus and everybody starting to get games involved. You're looking for European games. Betfred games will be there as well. Scottish Cup, there's Champions League, there's Europa League. Let's not forget there's a small matter of a playoff for Scotland as well. I mean, hey, I wouldn't like to be... There's the one job in Scotland I would not like to have, Roughy, is Ian Blair at the SPFL, who is a lovely man. He's a brilliant lad. But boy, I wouldn't like his job when he has to work out fixtures and not face accusations of favouring one team or the other. He's in a no-win situation.
He certainly is, particularly with all the new clubs as well, and the pyramid structure as well. I don't know if he deals with that, but certainly there are going to be more cup games. I think, have we cancelled that cup with all the Irish and Welsh teams? Are they just not playing in it?
The Challenge Cup.
Yeah, Iron Brew. Yeah, Iron Brew.
Yeah, they're not playing in it. It's just ourselves.
Yeah, do you want to tell you something? I'll be honest with you, Roughy. I couldn't tell you. I think
I think I read
it's not been announced yet.
But can I ask you this, Roughy? I need to ask you a question. What's the pyramid system? What's that, Roughy? What's the pyramid system?
Well, if it goes ahead next year, but don't mention that to anybody. Whatever you do, there'll be problems.
Yeah.
No, honestly, I keep going back to Peter. That this 27 games, that the lower divisions are playing. I think that's got a can of worms is going to open up down the road as well. Obviously, hopefully something doesn't happen again. But again, we could fall into the same scenario, not finishing a season. I hope that's not a case. But let's hope we can carry on. But no, I think it's good. The cups are very good for most of the teams to get a wee bit of success in the cups.
Okay, Sandy Malone says, I'd be genuinely surprised to see Celtic take on Fletcher with a high wage, basically to be looked at as a backup player. Then again, if French Eddie leaves for down south, if any of the reports are true, it will spell the complete end of Celtic's push for 10. The purchases Gerrard has made has finally got me 100% believing in his ability as a manager to come good for us. Sandy, I understand your enthusiasm for the signings, because that's the thing that gets all fans excited. There's lots of ifs and buts and maybes in that one. First of all, the one big fear for Celtic, I think, is, Tam, that the English clubs come and say, listen, here's the money, give us Odsonne Edouard.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest worry for every Celtic supporter out there, is that he continues in the vein of form he was in at the last weekend. He keeps banging in goals, and then, listen, somebody from England could come in and offer a big offer. I don't think Celtic would sell him for, I'm not going to say any amount because there's some crazy amounts that obviously you've got to look at, but minimum 30 million. I think minimum 30 million for Celtic to even contemplate selling Edouard this season in particular. And they're going for 10 in a row. The supporters would go absolutely nuts. So I think you're looking at 40, 50 million. And that's what you're looking at to sell Edouard this season. 30 million, I don't think Celtic would sell him. They can't risk the wrath of losing 10 in a row for money.
Yeah. Let's not say anything definitive when it comes to things like that. They can't. It just doesn't enter the board's mentality. It's like any club in Scotland. If there's a big enough offer, thank you very much and good night. Listen, the other thing about it, and we mentioned Rangers there, and I still think Rangers will sign another player, if not two. Celtic, Neil Lennon said to me at the weekend he was looking for 3 players, a striker, a centre-half. I think are the two absolute stonewall certainties, Tam. Is there a third element that you think might be needed?
At Celtic, Peter, if they look at their bench and against Hamilton Accies, their bench is so strong. They've got so much competition. You've still got Lee Griffiths out injured. They come back into that as well. I don't think they need too much, to be honest. I wouldn't be bringing in, I think 2. I think a striker is back up and maybe a centre-back, because I say Julian Ayer, I didn't think they were 100% at it last Sunday. I know it's early doors, but I think you need another one in there, just to provide a bit of competition for them. But two for me for Celtic, striker, centre-half.
Yeah, well, I think, listen, if I'm looking at that Celtic side, if they don't get a centre-half, I think they're in big trouble, because the two guys in question give other teams chances. And now I think the clear message from Rangers is, here is a big guy with a physicality who likes headering the ball, and he will be putting himself about, and they are going to, I think, have to respond with a physical striker. Yeah,
Julian's already struggled against that type of striker in Lyndon Dykes.
Well, absolutely.
So
I agree with you.
That's an area that Rangers will be looking to exploit against Julian if they play Eton.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
I'm just saying, I don't go along the thought of Beaton's a centre half. For me, he's not in our league. I think he could
good emergency centre half.
Rumbled as well, but I wouldn't like to throw him in a big game, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, okay. So other things I was going to mention to you guys, just with the European games that I showed you there earlier, UEFA guidelines have come out, and it says if clubs are blocked from entering the country that a game is supposed to be played in, due to obviously updates from the country on coronavirus, then the club that was hosting the game, that game will be forfeited in a 3-0 win. So that's an interesting twist on all this. So the onus is on the home team who are hosting the game to provide an alternative safe venue, could possibly be in a neutral country. But nevertheless, forfeiting a game, it's a harsh penalty when you think about it, but it's down to the fact, that they've got nowhere to put the fixtures. They've got to be played, and they've got to be played quickly.
Yep, I think safety's paramount, and if you're saying that, the forfeit, I think they'll be squeaky clean. Getting people in and out. Nobody will be allowed in there unless they've got the proper documents and different things. If they're going to risk losing a tie, so listen, I agree with that. I think they've got to get these fixtures played because you mentioned the League Cup games and all the European games, and the next season's European games will be starting soon as well. So it's unbelievably congested. So there's no other option but to get the games played now.
And is that
okay?
Is that active right now? I mean, is that for the games coming up? Obviously, Barcelona, Real Madrid.
I think that's guidelines that will come into place based on if it gets to a situation where there's a spike and suddenly a country locks down and changes the rules, then the onus is on the home team. So I think they're just trying to avoid fixture pile-ups because that's the last thing they can do in this very condensed fixture list. So we wait to see. Norman Heaney says Celtic need a Bobo Balder type player. Norman, I think you are right. It is. It's a kind of a look at Tam shake. Did you see Tam there? He started shaking. Soon as we mentioned it, Roughy,
I get the
he
butterflies.
started shaking it at the mere thought of it. And I'm amazed you didn't look behind you, Tam, just to see in case the big challenge was coming in at the back of you.
Oh, I tell you what, if Celtic get a guy like Bobo Balde, the strikers would be nervous playing against him. I absolutely hated playing against him. He was a beast of a man. I think 6'5" and about 18 stone of muscle, and he used to wear the biggest studs the studs were about that size. And I used to hate centre halves that played with the big studs. I used to prefer a centre half that won mouldies. I didn't like the big studs, Peter, because they could get rigged right in the back of your calf at any minute.
Bobo Balde. I mean, the amazing thing about him, Roughy, I don't think he kicked a ball for Celtic for the last 18 months of his contract, and it did not bother him. He's just happy to take the money that he'd agreed.
Yeah, it was amazing, and you would have thought they would have come to some compromise down the road, but rumours are that he was 28 grand for that amount of time. And I know you want to play football, but I don't even know, where did he go after that? I think he opened a bank somewhere. He opened a bank somewhere.
And a vineyard. He'd plenty of money. Nevertheless, a fearsome character. But listen, that's the thing that you need in the back line sometimes. I think, and that's why I think it's very interesting seeing the Rangers Cedric Itten signing Tam, because quite simply I think it's a smart move. I think it's a move that, when Martin O'Neill put his side together in a 3-5-2 formation, he had craft, he had a world-class striker, but he had height, physicality, and people who could put themselves about, who could mix it up, and that meant Celtic were not only a threat coming from the midfield, they were a threat on the flanks with their fullbacks bombing forward, but they were a threat from set pieces where people knew that you would have 1, 2, 3 possible centre-backs and throw in Chris Sutton into the mix and John Hartson. And then, of course, the ultimate striker in Larsson. There was all sorts. It was so many options to try and pick them up. You were fearful of a free kick.
Yeah, you were. Listen, I played against Celtic many times, but during that period with Martin O'Neill, and they were the biggest side I've ever played against. Even in the tunnel, when you walked out and you looked up beside them, they were massive, a massive team. Stan Varga, Bobo Balde, Mialbi. Then you mentioned Hartson, Sutton. And they were a team that had a lot of guile as well. Moravchik, Petrov, Larsson, you mentioned. So you could never bully Celtic, so you couldn't get in an arm wrestle with them. And they had the guile to break you down if they come up against an equally physical team. So I think it's very important to have both parts of that in your team. Rangers are probably looking to that. I think at times it did look a little bit whiffy-woffy and a little bit, weak at times in games. And I think they're looking to remedy that by bringing in bigger players. And Cedric Itten, I think, is the start of that. They can mix it up. They can put balls in the box. If teams sit in, they can go and try and attack them early and break them down physically. So I think it's a great thing to have a mixture of both, Peter.
Yeah. Stephen Hill says, Peter, you don't know it. And Stephen, you're absolutely right. But again, I would again ask you to listen to the conversation in its context. He is a strong, tall, physical guy. He, looking at the video evidence, he certainly can score a goal with his head. He could work out to be someone who just doesn't cut it. But there's no doubt he's been bought by Rangers for, first of all, they've seen something in him from St Gallen that he can score goals. The stats back it up, and he'll be able to put himself about. And that physicality is something that Rangers were looking for. They didn't want to rely on a small Alfredo Morelos type player, a small Jermaine Defoe type player. They're looking for someone to give them options in a different style of play, Roughy. So, Stephen, although I know you're not a Rangers fan, you know, I am giving you the context of why they bought him and what he will offer, because you only have to look at him to see, Roughy, his height, his physicality. We don't know if he's got a good touch or not. We don't know if he can bring other players in from the midfield, but he'll certainly be able to get on the end of a few crosses.
Yeah, I think if there's any Rangers supporters, obviously who have been at the games last year, a lot of Rangers' success was it corners. Big boys coming up for the back were causing problems, and if you add another big centre forward into that, it's only a plus for me, you know, because generally, you know, that's when a lot of the goals are scored now, are set pieces and corners. So yeah, you've got to have a variety, and you say if you look at Defoe, you know, the biggest in the world, he's not going to out jump somebody at 6'3", 6'4". So yeah, it's just another route to go down that he's identified when there's certain teams that he plays, whether it's Livingston or whoever, Ross County, when it's difficult to break them down. You need that kind of physicality.
Yeah, and Stephen goes on to say, we'll have to wait and see. He could work out to be a good signing. Yeah, listen, we don't know. I've listened to countless chief executives and chairmen sit next to a player and give him a big cuddle and announce to the fans this fantastic player, and he turns out to be, you know, a complete dud. I mean, it's as simple as that. Every team can write down their top 30. I remember a guy who signed for Hearts. I'll never forget it. I was a reporter through there, and you know, I was at Radio 4 at the time, and I'll never forget him. He always sticks in my head because I thought to myself, oh, I think I could be a professional footballer if he's making it. Hans Eskilsson. Do you remember him, Tam? Hans Eskilsson.
I remember the name.
He couldn't hit a barn door from 2 yards. He was murder. He was the worst Hearts player I've ever seen.
Peter.
He was like the boy Weah, who Graham Souness put on, who he thought was George Weah's brother, and he was rank rotten as well. I mean, I could list you 1,000 duds that I've seen down through the years who couldn't score goals.
You remember Ulises de la Cruz that played for Hibs in Ecuador International? He ended up going to Aston Villa for about $1.5 million. He done well. It was good for Hibs, but he didn't speak any English, and he was struggling to settle in. So Alec McLeish went and bought, I assume, a pal for him, and a guy called Ivan Hurtado. His nickname was the Tank. And you talk about physicality. This guy walked in the door. He was like the Rock. Right? He was about 6'5", a machine. Ecuador International, and he was without doubt the worst football player I've ever seen. He was hopeless, and the Hibs fans were all buzzing because his nickname was the Tank, but he turned like a tank. Yeah, and he had a touch like a trampoline. So as you say, you don't always live up to your expectation.
Another thing I've been noticing as well, and I was going to ask you, Peter, all your years of the media, have you ever seen a player being signed by a club and then they dish out somebody who used to play with him and tells you how wonderful he is and what he can do and what he can't? Has there been ever the case when an ex-player come on and said, he's rotten, by the way, I can't believe you've signed him. He's murder. I've never seen that.
There's a few times I've been dying to see that.
Yeah, well, Tam, the great thing about it is I've spoken to 1,000,001 and interviewed them all over the period that I've been working in the game, and they'll come out and they'll say things, and they'll go and get their mates, and they'll go and get some people who played with them to give it a positive spin that he's a great player and everything. But, you know, the amount of professional footballers, and I include you two guys in this, the amount of professional footballers have told me over the years that sometimes they're able to deduce whether the guy could play after maybe 1, 2, 3 training sessions. They know he just can't play. The proof is in the pudding at times. And the amount of players have said to me, God almighty, I can't believe they've signed him. He's murder. But you can't say it out, you know, because that's not fair. You've got to you know, let them
give him a chance.
And Neil Thompson's just come on Facebook and he said, and now I am going to argue with Neil Thompson on this one. Neil Thompson says Torrey Andre Flo springs to mind. Now, I have to say, and I watched the boy play for Rangers, and a lot of Rangers fans will say the same. Torrey Andre Flo wasn't a bad player. It was just
the price tag.
It was the price tag that they paid. Dick Advocaat, I think, paid 12 million for him. And I think he scored in his first season something like maybe 22 goals. Torrey Andre Flo wasn't a bad player. But, with Celtic and Rangers, if you're scoring 22 and the other boy's scoring 53 in the season, and the other boy happens to be Henrik Larsson, and playing in the green and white, and you're in the blue and white, you're under pressure. So it was quite unfair. I thought Torrey Andre Flo was not a bad player, Roughy. I think history is maybe being a little harsh on him.
Yeah, I think when they signed him for 12 million, I think he scored about 20 goals, and probably people were expecting him to score 40 goals, because of the price tag. But I've never heard any Rangers supporter saying he was an absolute dud, because I think the time he was there, he scored his fair share. But
absolutely.
The thing with the expectation thing, and I've told you the story about Dixie Deans coming to Thistle. Dixie signed for Thistle from Australia, and he came in on a Friday morning, and Donny McKinnon said, "Right, Roughy, we'll sign Dixie Deans." And I went, "Fantastic." He says, "Goal scoring record is unbelievable." He says, "We're just going to go out in the park, just me, you and him, and I'm going to go behind the goals, and I'm going to feed 20 balls out to him, 18-yard box, and wait to see the finishing." Of course, Dixie told me this was going to happen. Dixie hit 20 balls into Queen's Cross. He never hit the target once. He tripped over the ball. He fell. And Donny McKinnon's at the post to me going, "I can't believe this. He's lost it. He's lost it completely." That was so funny.
That's typical of footballers like you for the wind up. Yeah. I'll tell you another thing, Tam. We were actually thinking about some of the music, and we were talking about it in the office earlier about players that sign, and obviously if they've got a name, Will Griggs. He had a song, Will Griggs on Fire. Do you remember that one? And there's a great dance song, and you'll remember it, Tam, because obviously you frequented some of the same mad places that I did. But if Kemar Roof works out to be a fantastic player for Rangers, then they're surely going to they're surely going to resurrect the roof is on fire. I mean, it's a great dance classic. I mean, it's a Stonewall certainty. They've got to get it out, haven't they, Tam? If he scores goals, you need a song.
Yep, that was why I never had a song my whole career, to be honest with you, Peter. No, but if the Rangers fans will be desperate for him to score so they can play the tune, and you'll see it in social media and all that. So listen, it's always good. It's always good to have a wee song and a wee bit of something like that beside your name if you bang a goal in. But unfortunately for me, mine was just a blank cassette.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks to a number of people who've mentioned it. I was on young Ryan and David's Scottish Football podcast. Two young guys. One of them, Ryan, we had on our programme as a fan. He was talking about his favourite team, and the two of them asked me to go on their podcast, and I wish them well. The Scottish Football podcast. Two young lads who are absolutely passionate about the game. And as I always say... and as I always say, Roughy, there's room for everyone. If you can all survive and talk about football, there's room for everybody in the game. I just love more and more young talent coming into our profession to broadcast and radio and television and of course in the podcasts that are springing up everywhere.
Yeah, and as you know, it's not the first time we've sent somebody on their way, to a bigger career. So I mean that's a good thing about it as well. These people, and of course, they come into the studio and you give them everything available to them to help them on their way.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, some people make decisions and then move downwards as well, Roughy, and go into obscurity and nobody ever hears of them again. So, we've had them as well, Roughy, down through the years and more recently. So now let's look at the next thing, which is, I'm just looking at it here. Stephen O'Donnell is doing something which I think is always the dicey thing, Tam, especially after COVID. Now we're in a situation where players are looking and wondering whether they're going to get a deal. He's waiting. Oxford are interested. They're also looking at Sean Clare as well, the Hearts player. I always think it's a difficult time for players. Stephen O'Donnell, especially, I think, is a good catch for someone, but he wants to go down and play League One, maybe bottom end Championship.
Yeah, I think even more so, Peter, with the COVID situation and pandemic, it's a real difficult time for players. I know for a fact again that Stephen O'Donnell knocked back a 3-year deal in January at Oxford to try and keep his options open before COVID hit. So very, very unfortunate and unlucky for him. I think he's probably fortunate that Oxford are still interested in him. So I think they're very keen to get him in, clearly. So he's got that in the back burner, and maybe we try to get something else. I think in terms of Scottish clubs, I think he's wanting to go to England. So Sean Clare as well. It seems as if Carol Robinson, I think, is the manager at Oxford. He's got a keen eye for players up here. Sean Clare, I think, in terms of Hearts, was kind of ridiculed at the start of his career. I don't think the Hearts fans were having him at all. But I think towards the end of the season there, he was certainly coming onto a game, and he looked as if he was worth the fee that they paid. So I think that will be a blow for Hearts, because I think he'd be a big part of their squad in the coming season.
Yeah, couple of other things I want to draw to your attention, guys. This one is an interesting one because Lewis McLeod wants to come back to Scotland. I think he would be a good signing, Roughy. I like Lewis McLeod.
That's a name we forgot about, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is.
Exactly.
Until I saw it. Yeah, I saw it this morning. Yeah, I think he's done enough to maybe, to certainly look into it anyway. Teams like, I would say, Hibs would be a good. And just while you're on about McLeod, did Docherty go back to Rangers?
Yeah, there was.
Yeah, for good. He's still there.
He's
not talking about him getting back. So I think Lewis McLeod had certainly a lot of skill and ability that certainly clubs up here. But again, he'll know what he's getting down there, and there might be other clubs down there who saw what he can do. So again, you're going to get hit financially if he comes back here.
I think Lewis was unlucky, Tam. He picked up an injury as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Which curtailed his career.
Yeah, he did. He picked up a really bad one when he first went down to England, and he struggled a little bit. But I think he's been down there for a number of years. He played with several clubs, and as Roughy said, out of sight, out of mind. I'd forgot all about Lewis McLeod, and he was a real big prospect at Rangers. So listen, there'll be a few clubs in Scotland who'll be interested in signing him, and players will have to adjust their wages. You're not going to get what you were getting in England. In Scotland, you're going to have to take a bit of a cut to stay in the game, and a lot of players will be doing the same. They'll all be undercutting each other to try and get a job, to be honest.
Yeah. And a couple of points I want to pull out here from the YouTube and the Facebook. Gary says he'd be a great signing for a Hibs or a Motherwell. I agree with you, Gary, 100%. Over and above that, there's another one there, which was just basically Niall saying to us that Flo Canberry is signing for St Gallen. Yeah, we've been talking about that, Niall. Canberry eventually. St Gallen's the only club he ever wanted to play for, Roughy, eventually.
Yeah. I think he's got a jersey in the house already, and he's kissing it.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Roughy.
I tell you, Peter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Hibs will be delighted, because I know Jack was desperate to get him out the door, to be honest with you. He wasn't part of the plans at Hibs, and the Hibs supporters, after declaring his undying love for Rangers before playing a game while he was on loan, I think stuck in a few Hibs supporters' throats as well. So I think it's better for everyone that he's went over to Switzerland, and hopefully Hibs got a fee that they can maybe reinvest back into the squad.
Yeah, and Stephen Hill says, any truth in the rumours, James McCarthy to Celtic? That's a story that just never goes away, to be perfectly honest with you. Listen, 500 midfielders in there. I mean, how many can you play in the midfield if they bought McCarthy? The other one I was going to say to you guys, Ryan Fraser, 50 grand a week, possibly at Crystal Palace. Just when people were tipping him for a big move, Roughy, to the likes of a Liverpool, suddenly it's Crystal Palace who seem to be the only team standing there waiting to sign him.
Yeah, I've never been part of the theory as a Liverpool player. I think he's a very, very good player. There's no doubt about that. But I think that's a jump too much for him. I think the quality that's at these Liverpools, Man City, Man United, I think he's maybe a wee bit better than Crystal Palace, but not up there with the top 5 for me.
Yeah, and then John Strelecki on YouTube says, who drops out of the team for McCarthy at Celtic. That's the other part of it. And of course, Lee McManus says Ryan Fraser for Liverpool Geese peace. Lee, to be perfectly honest with you, it's not me that said it. It was in the papers at the time a few months ago, and then suddenly it just doesn't materialise. What happens is an agent just goes on and starts punting it to one of his mates in the newspaper just to drum up a bit of interest. That's how the whole merry-go-round goes. Also, one thing that is certain at the moment, Tam, and I want to get your thoughts on it, Barry Hepburn, a young player at Celtic, signing for Bayern Munich, and also it looks as if Aaron Hickey is edging ever closer to joining the German Giants. Now, that would be a loss to our game, but there's no doubt about it. Aaron Hickey's got something.
Yeah, listen, fantastic for the two boys. Bayern Munich, one of the biggest clubs in the world, without a shadow of a doubt. What an education you would get over there. I think Miroslav Klose is part of the coaching staff over there as well, and the youth setup. There was another boy, is it Liam Morrison? Is it a lad from Celtic that went to Bayern Munich as well, defender? So there's obviously someone has got a scout over in Scotland from Bayern Munich, so they're looking at Scottish players. And I think it's fantastic. Listen, the more young boys we can get abroad, and because it's never been an avenue that a lot of young players have went abroad, we've always stayed here. If you can go over there between the ages of 16 and 20, what an education you'll get. Even if you don't make it over there, you come back to Scotland, you're a better player. You've played under top coaches at top clubs. And so I wish the boys all the best. If Aaron Hickey, I think if he goes to Bayern Munich, it would be a sensational move for him, and Hearts would get a few quid. He's definitely got something. He just has to improve a little bit physically, but going forward at his age, he's really, really promising.
Yeah, let's hope Barry Hepburn's not Liam Morrison's mate, and they've just signed him there, and they're going to call him the Tank just to keep him company over in Germany. That's the last thing we want to see. Anyway, we wish him all the very best. Nevertheless, okay. Just before we go, guys. We might as well hear from the man of the moment from last night, because I sat down and I thought to myself, and I had a deep thought about this, guys. I sat down and I thought, okay, my wife's going to watch this programme, my daughter's going to watch another programme. Am I going to just sit here and am I going to watch Fulham against Brentford? Which I have to be honest with you guys, if somebody
must be nice to have three televisions in your house.
Well, one of them could have been watching a computer, and one of them could. Oh, okay, shut it. The point I was about to make was, I thought Brentford against Fulham. Would I watch that normally? I wouldn't draw the curtains, as Tommy Docherty once said. But I thought it's the big game. It's worth about £160 million. I'll sit down and watch it. It was rank rotten. It was rotten. But in the end, Fulham deservedly won the game, Roughy, with a brilliant goal from Joe O'Brien. I mean, just a bit of sheer quick thinking and skill to execute it from a free kick, caught out the keeper, balls in the net, and then they're on their way to a 2-1 win.
Believe it or not, according to one of the players they'd looked into, that's what they do. They play a high line and the goalkeeper anticipates, coming up. But it's still an unbelievable hit, 35 yards. I mean, it went in at pace. It was fantastic, but you're right, and it's unfortunate because I know what you're saying, Peter. It was a bit of a bore, but if that game was with the spectators allowed in, would have been absolutely electric. That stadium would have been jam packed. It would have been absolutely fantastic. So well done to the players. But I would like to add a wee bit in there. Why are we not talking about the Fulham captain and the Scotland setup? Surely we now have another Premier League player.
Tom Kearney.
Yeah.
I thought he was pretty impressive as well.
He was. Tom Kearney's a good player. He's neat and tidy. He's it's nice, it's neat, it's tidy.
Midfield's your strongest area, Peter.
Yeah, absolutely. I like players who actually, their automatic thought. Good midfielders, great midfielders for me, their automatic thought is they can take the ball in the half turn and they can pick a pass going forward. The whole idea of, playing square balls, neat 5-10 yards, try and unlock the defences. The best midfielders, they can do that. And I'm not saying Tom Kearney can't do that, but I just think he's neat and tidy. He's not really up at the top end of what I think Steve Clarke will be looking at, Tam. Am I being unkind?
No, I think you're bang on, Peter. I think he's a good player. I watched him last night. He's had a good career at Fulham. Pops up with the odd goal. But you look at our midfield for Scotland, it's McTominay, McGinn, young Billy Gilmore coming through. We've got extremely good players in there, playing at a higher level. So McGregor, and so I don't think he gets in the team. In terms of what Roughie's saying about the squad, yeah, maybe bring him into the squad and have a look at him. But I think he'd find it very difficult to get into the starting 11.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, congratulations to Fulham. They did really well. And I was delighted for a man that I always like to watch. It's the manager, of course, Scott Parker.
And along the way, we've pushed and pushed and pushed, tried to change a mentality, trying to change a real way about us because we knew how important it was. But trying to balance that with an expectation of you're expected to win a league by 20 points after, which was a disappointing team, has been the balance constantly. And I'm proud because I see a team that has transformed. I also see a team that we're still learning and still growing and we still need to improve. But I just feel proud at the moment. Of course I feel emotional and probably going on too much now, but I'm very proud.
Yeah, he was a good player, Roughy. I liked watching Scott Parker. I thought he was a no-nonsense, give it your all.
Yeah, so did I. And it just shows you if you're at a club and the owners are prepared to hang in with you, after the relegation, it just shows you can get rewards. So, well done to him, and you could see the emotion last night when it all kicked in.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge game. Fulham back in the Premier League in England. Tam, what will you be doing tonight? Will you be watching the game? Is that what you're going to spend your time doing tonight? Are you able to convince your better half that this is a massive game? The reason I say that to you, Tam, and I might as well tell you, I was living in a flat in Edinburgh with my nephew who was had asked if he could come through and stay in the flat with me, and we had a great time in the flat in Lothian Road. I'll never forget it, Tam. And we would watch football because we were young. We loved our football. We were watching it once, and the girl that I was going out with said, "All you two ever do is watch football. It's got to stop." And she said, "You're not watching piddle." This is her line, Tam. Now, I want you to give me the advice of what happened next, right? So my nephew, who was about 19 at the time, 20, he's sitting on the couch and she says, "You're not watching piddly games anymore. It's got to be a big game or you're not watching it." So at that point, I turned round with a look of disdain. I said, "This is Brentford against Charlton. This has got huge implications in the second division of English football." I wonder if you can guess what happened next, Tam.
You married her?
No. Not that one, Tam. No, I don't know if you've heard the fantastic Western Scotland line, Tam. The word is duped. My nephew looked at me. I looked at my nephew and I thought, she hasn't got long to go. She's right
You're
out
not the girl for me.
This is not the show for you.
Wish I'd been your neighbour.
God's sake.
Yeah, you'd be still going out with her now. Oh, there's absolutely no doubt.
A lawnmower man.
Exactly, Tom, you've nailed it. Anyway, but if you're lucky enough to watch Europa League tonight, good luck to you. I'm not sure I'm going to get away with it, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm going to try my best. I'm going to save it for tomorrow for Leverkusen against Rangers. You've always got to load the bases and make sure you give a little, so you can almost certainly get Leverkusen against Rangers tomorrow. So I might have to forgo tonight. I don't know. Anyway, listen, whatever you're doing, stay safe as ever. Thanks to Tam for his great wit and charm. He'll be back with us again on Friday, and thanks to Roughy as well. And thanks to you. Don't forget to like, share and follow us. Every day now, you can get news brought to you by Gabriel Antoniazzi on Scottish, English and World News on our site. If you subscribe to us on YouTube, you'll have it all there. If you download the app, you'll get it all at your fingertips. PLZ Soccer, thank you for supporting us. Join us tomorrow if you can. Thanks for watching.
Expect the best used car deals guaranteed. Visit